Hello everyone and welcome back to today's episode. We have a very special guest today, someone who is actively shaping the landscape, health and disability advocacy. Please welcome to the mic, Kong Larisuk Raplang. Kong Lari is a neuro-specialist with a Master's of Occupational Therapy in Neuroscience, and for nearly a decade and a half, she's been the driving force running the Occupational Therapy Unit for Civil Hospital. She's also the woman on the ground making things happen as the DRCDA manager for the East Khasi Hills district and a Disability Rehabilitation Expert for the SRCDA. For her vital work with the State Allied and Healthcare Council as the Nodal Officer, and for her deeply impactful visit supporting the residents of the halfway Congo women with mental illnesses and disability, her career is a masterclass in community impact. It is an honor to have you. Thank you for joining us. Hi. Thank you so much once again for joining us. So in the intro that I created somewhat for you, you are an occupational therapist at Civil Hospital for nearly a decade and a half, 14 years. Can you define what occupational therapy is and what do OTs actually do?
Thank you so much, Duffy. Thank you for having me here. So yes, I will explain what do occupational therapy do. So basically, let me kind of explain what is OT first. Okay? Kemudian kong kalau ba nakata therapy, therapy is actually a medical treatment. Okay, any type of medical treatment involve yaka medicine and surgery. That is called therapy. Okay, it's a medical treatment. So occupational therapy is medical treatment that is evidence-based. It's already been tried and tested, proven, scientifically proven that it works, and that's why we are doing it. Okay, so medical treatment. Yeah, so occupational therapy is it works in a various fields. Okay, ni pet yaki brio with orthopedic condition, kumatag brio fracture, kibuyo bapang sengkai, bapang rendang, and all like that. Makin belong kibuyo day bakishing ki orthopedic condition, and then pet yaki brio ki with a neurological condition. Okay, neurological condition pada day but ki bapang ki kumgini spinal cord injury, ola fracture us spinal cord, kila paralyzed, tinggi pet kum kita ki brio, dan pet ru ki belong dan nerve problem. Okay, ki Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, all kinds of nerve pain kedan. Okay, kita condition, then we sumar kami kita mo, and then kita dapat ki cases ki pediatric cases wingi amo pediatric cases kita tang mataki khalum. Okay, ki khalum benda dan ki belum developmental delay kam ka jing he jing sanjum ki kam kot ya ka to ka badai ka ban kot kat kum kapor ka kita ka milestones wingi amo kita re one of them. Baar pada kumikini khilung di badan cerebral palsy kita aruk di neurological condition hi but naka brain ta ki khilung ki pat layat ki khilung ki dan problem kum ki specific learning disability. Okay, ki khilung ki badan problem with handwriting. Okay, dan ki pet ki khilung ki badan autism ta ki ADHD tang pet ru ki khilung ki dan behavioral problems. Okay, and then ipet du ki rangba ki riu temen. Okay, ki geriatric cases ki kita di geriatric cases kum ki geriatric cases kelong hadin ki ru postnam kam biang show ka reflexes yung ki kloy haban ur to we have a very specific treatment for them kam tamlay bing hot ka prevention of fall kum no ban penduna kita ka jing ur yung ki bun have ki bun ki temen ki riu temen ki sit ur ba yo ti kum ki tu de ban kin la fracture la postnam kan postnam kam long safe kam kalong ka ma bahai kin marmre ban treat ru kala jencar ti ban surgery ru dang por ka outcome ka kam dalong good response ti kum kitung isit sumar sha kan bakanja katang ong prevention of falls kalong ba in pedunai katang ong prevention is better than cure sung pedunai kata ka jengjia kanang makanong poi sa takapot. Okay, and then gi sumaru kumentani dat kata ka community based rehabilitation. Community-based rehabilitation pat kalong bang sumari ki break badan haki jakash nong jongki. Okay, ka jing sumar pada kalong ba Ni penankam lagi nu kitiar ki belong, but ki resources belong local available. So manta kim la ban shnado u kumanta Indian toilet but u European kamut so ang kaya pair. Di hapo no kandong gila ban shnado ki kinja belong ki japit nol tangba kaban ne kinja sit instead of ban bu itu kamut ipin kay kun ban shnado ki sit ki bikila ban toilet mo kata de kawin ki areas mo bingipet. Di kawai ru ngipet kelong ba ngipet iki beri with mental illness and disability. Mental illness and disability ber kelong ba ki children with intellectual disability. Mensyadi ang mental retardation mentang ang intellectual disability. Ki ba duna ha ka bot perkhat. But ki kumjur ki mental illness ber kelong ki jingpang. Kum ki schizophrenia. Dan gidan ki jingpang kum ki seizures. More seizures and the epilepsy. Kita ngipet iki sumar kum kita ki ki beri bayok tak jingpang ta. Ni pedru ki beri badan depression, anxiety.
Like to treat these without the use of medication.
See, not everything can be treated with medications. Okay, so nilong iya hand in hand kit. What the medical doctor can do, we cannot do. We cannot prescribe medications, we cannot do surgery. But what we can do, they cannot do. I mean, what the therapist can do, they cannot do. Ni try lang as a team. Okay, because kimna aram ong bang chu ka if everyone ki try in silo ang laga jong tilong kamdan ka teamwork to the namdan ka holistic approach kani tay whoever ni sumari tay brio kanamdan ka holistic approach.
So your method of treatment is very much based on the holistic approach.
Holistic approaches.
And I wanted to ask again about this community-based rehabilitation. Kino kini kijakaf taale paning pembisit pan daligan habata niyan.
Ki rabon ki jakabing le but bun sin pade long ki brio ki wan chani. Kin madhangne ki brio ki bun ki trim te ban shna da kading. So ni aing should try ki pin i design hene kala ko no to ki replicate kata.
That's very interesting for you work with the strengths of group people.
Ho and then ki therapy based ni pinika in such a way ba ki brio ki bade chno kandong ru kinumla raban ong ba mi hamle e kani kam namar ba imdan gitiar la judan ba ong dam sha mo kidan ki parents ki ong ni mla raban de kani mangdan gitiar. The based on that ni ru ni las ka structure jungi kala kham paired ni le kum no hi kai be ki tiar ki ba la ban yo available hi tadi ba kalong yin ke ba bambiang ka mai ka ji ne ki hamduna ka jing yo jing kot ru ki la ba ban evolve ne ban sumar hi khana na ka tiar badan hi.
So you speak about the holistic approach to treatments, and another bit of therapy is physical therapy or physiotherapy. How is occupational therapy actually different from those two?
That's a very good question. So physical therapy and occupational therapy, okay, they are from the same family. The only long ba difference kalong ba along mata brother and sister. Okay, brothers and sister, they are from the same family. Tikdan ki treatment belongs similar because kidin kajuk kalong yung kajuk family. But at the same time also, as you know, there's a role that a brother will play and there's a role that a sister will play. Di hada kaliang part kalong ba physiotherapy kalong more physical, kalong more tough and crude, hindi kalong more rough ki kind of activities kalong commission rang. So ki kamle kita give up it's more like physiotherapy mo kat ba in occupational therapy ki kamlong more fine, more refined, kita kamlong more detailed, kita boleh ki long ki occupational therapist kan. So yeah. So but the thing is like that's why no one is better. You can't say okay the brother is better than the sister or the sister is better than the brother. And if they work together, it means ka family kalong the system of the family system will be very strong. The bonsin if in any place where bikidan lang kumni ka rehabilitation treatment rehabilitation approach kalong very strong.
So talking about physical therapy and physiotherapy, yesterday when one man offers of event like how everything works, we saw a stroke victim that was tried to hold up on steps, and you told me that you went through a few months of physical therapy and then came to occupational therapy. Would you say that is because he was trying to define his moments or he find in movements, so to speak. Because he went on physical therapy to occupational therapy, and he did see some success in physiotherapy. But what successes can he expect from occupational therapy?
Yeah, for stroke patient, yes, physiotherapy they have done for a few months. He was bedridden. Okay, he's able to stand. He's able to walk with support. Then after that, then he come to occupational therapy. Now we have to focus on his hand. Okay, without his hand, if his hand is able to grip or grab, then it'll be easier for him to walk also. Okay, and then the arm movement. A simple thing like an arm swing. Mo you don't make arm swing. Okay, without arm swing, what happen is ke balance, kalong imbalance ke mat. Okay, that sometimes kerja kum do nak benur. And if he fall on the affected side untuk bayo stroke, kalong jenjar haben jen. Okay, so bentri tu ham jenjar. So to do that thing happen, you most actually belum important kalong ba rehabilitate kakti, specialize bahaya kakti. Okay, apa handy because most of the work because occupation no, so most of the work bagi tray ki brio ko din kakti. Kakajat kalong yang ta gross motor skills mo. Kalong gross ngan kam hawat mai mong dan kam hapatan kaban ya penjeng bensyong di kitu bro khat na hitai mo he's already la don lupa ke improvement hendiat timtang hitai kum nu dia bandit pen khana mo kum nu benjeng na po kerja ka pensyong bandit toilet kum nu ban kiu. Okay, itu bilang functional kan, ni bilang functional. So kumini dia kumini mentang ni kam concentrate bahai kakti, and di bateri hapo post office. So then kam kan pentray the kakti. So katangi happen address all. I did my post graduation in neuro. Okay, but the thing is during a bachelor we have done everything: ortho, neuro, pediatrics, mental health, community based rehabilitation, all that. Mo hand therapy and all. Tangba Europe dia kalong ba. I took that subject neuro because kadan lang ba mental as well as neuro. I kata that's my specialty actually. I mean that I went for. Tang ba hangnip di hapo orthopedics puding dan hangnip ni ka orthopedic department hapo Civil Hospital. Okay. Tan ba baka ka government hospital ngimpet tang ki brio ki badan orthopedic condition. Nai ki badan tang ki ba jimpang jo ka siing emo. Ngipet jo brok hat makiwan lagi case brok hat.
What age groups do you actually work with? Because you mentioned like you work with kids and also geriatric people. So what age group do you?
Nindang age group specific. No, whoever comes ngipet bet tang bangi nado bedang kha from a day one of a child also me adjust the problem. Kini neonatal stage rung lapet di pediatrics rung ipet. Tabahang ni ngimdon ki neonatal care, ngimdon Ganesh Das kidon. So actually kidan kam occupational therapist and Ganesh Das actually because ni focus bahwa ki kena dan pelong premature babies. Yeah, kami kitung ipet, kidan feeding disorder. Mo, timentas menta if a child bamla ban suck. The kijinjar ong the child needs to suck the breast milk. Jadi kimla ban suck it will be difficult for them. They won't get the proper nutrition. So if they don't get the proper nutrition, they can affect development junkie. So that also we adjust kan. That's a neonatal care. Then balik dan kiba ka na do bakla po ba ka then ki siyo taka ups paralysis kalong paralyze hilian. Di ko mi kitur ngapet na do bagiang dap saw benai san benai ngapet. Di hado bakin da larang ba. Hado gina temen ring. Yung kamdan age specific treatment ha. Ngipet na do badang ka hado bakin da lalong temen.
See, I had that misconception that OTs only work with kids or like stroke victims and people of the geriatric. But what are some other misconceptions that people have about occupational therapy?
The main misconception is that we treat only children. That is thing is because keeper can't be treating children because we deal a lot with children and we are very, very expert with children. They benilong tati won't handle the children, so they send the children to us. So because of that, people will think that we are only child-centric therapy. Kita
So the thing,
And then another one is the term, actually, more the term occupational. I don't know why they give that term occupational therapy. Actually, that term occupation itself, kalau mesti ding tu, the occupation means kila pakat bang dan pakat bang ang job counseling. Occupation, yes, they thought they would give job counseling, things like that. So that term actually is kind of misleading. And yeah, that's one of the things that I have always protest about that, but they have a different concept. For them, they're long kumamatay man yan, no? They, I find that it's better if we give a functional therapist or something. Then if they give a developmental therapist, come justify. Because we don't just see only the development of the child. More come justify that term. If you give functioning also, we don't do only function. Okay, like I explained to you earlier, ng holistic hati ng pitang yung function ng brain ng development. We see their financial state, we see their emotional state, we see their cognitive state, we see a very holistic hack approach to me. So because of that, kim lara ban club a one word for that. That's why they just give occupation. Yeah, that's why the occupation occupational everything that we do that occupy your time. They can make it from that concept. It's occupational therapy. See, if the parents actually spend a lot of time with the child, they'll always think can lapbet mo diki make pa ki lut por habat khun jo kiam can lapbet ki subtle science manta khlung hapo lai banai la di ban ki te ban explore ban kta ban pet ki make pa tang na to bikin pet ru la ban lap dan something ka compare okay ti ngalap haba hangni sor somehow kadang ki dang la ban notice kata mo ki jaka belong nong kendong pat kila kambun ki khun kim den Porsche ban pet kita ki subtle science so ki should miss out didang ke por pat menta kila slim te kata development menta ki dan te hapo ki benai mak dan ki different developmental months ma hapo hendru benai la di ban kelap lup ki pala kelap lup menta ke ti na dan ki benai ba di ban par adi ban yeng kim yeng adi ban yat kim yat ti dang ke pop de ki dan ki shit ong ba kata ngla jutlap ha bang na lak pun ha ki parents ki shit yong okay kini pa kan ba ki ong ba kini hadin ki sayat kini din ke skin sala hi benda hi tamakat bakin notice kata la de asnam de kala kham slam kin tikin da yo ban ina donin kong de hajika bakin wan le therapy tang hapok khandet bra ki hawan dikisnam de kata ka bang shit lap ha kan de kum kita di for developmental you de la lap de la notice bahat itu bet bakadante ka yun ki khanga ru ba Shillong ka ti kim penan kam ha ne shi ka kazat Shillong ke bepen ki than ke dekan jat than kita ki satu sense wala ban lap even kidan kunta mo kini ki menta ti kila menta mos ke menta ti ngi pe khulung ru bang kharu ale hearing test ti ban lap ba kidan hearing problem on that menta ka along ta hapo hospital ti ba kha yin baden ti kinam la ban de menta.
how do you actually spot if a child has autism? What are the signs?
Actually, kung autism ru hapo arsnam ala ban lap ho. Jadi keen observation ala hapo arsnam.
Okay, some common denominators.
Sometimes ki parents ki shit nga ala bon ha kan ba ki kena kamta make rang kim pat la ban kren hapo laisnem. Ki la long panic. Okay, but that's very natural actually ki shenrang ki kam slim ban kren ban ki kan thai mo ti tang ba long kata long natural actually kamal le hi ta badan ko por pring alap ki some ki parents ki long dan ki jing shap ting te ba what if yon khun jang hai long autistic ne ko tu ni jing sha kamele ki science ki long ba mainly about autism do dang khana la long dan ki ka first that you see is the eye contact kaduna ka eye contact okay te kim da pet ba ne ki khana ki grow typical growing children do like nice of neck la dan ka eye contact but kikini pa children with autism but kim dan eye contact kim do na kim pet har eye kim la ban you can actually count in seconds but eye contact how long oh there's no eye contact at all so things could be 1 second and then they just look away so that's the first thing more about eye contact and then there's things but they fin up ba kidan do dang red ru dan kini ki kita ki senses mo kita maintain mani kapit dah kita ki sensory issues ni ma sensory issues come from the different types of senses that a human body has. So sense of touch, sense of touch mo kita ka met mo sense of touch thì kita ki kena kem sunat ban pong certain type of texture. Suppose menta cotton is a very very soft kabam long it's compared to wool, compared to cotton and wool texture mo. The just cotton itself, some children, certain type of cotton, they might not like it. Kim sunat, di kiling akin, kim yam ne ki, bunsin di ki yan hi go bun kena because kim la no ban ong bak ka dat ka met ne ka pang ne ka met ne ka long prickly ka met ne ka long kam no mo kim la ban ong ki la ban chu yan. Some of the signs, but pang certain types of clothing la ban indication. Cerita ka deka way. Thì kita beri bom sunat bentong muja kem sunat bentong juti kem sunat sunat la banyak dah kezat dekrefa. Thì kita beri kiba tik tak tang tik bom lokman kata jika bagian itu di subtle signs actually. Hapo 2 years kan menta kum ke kaliru ni tik kena long kena typical growing children tik kaliru kan kinya ikali tik la satu pada banyak ke kali ki they can move the toy around gitu. Jadi dia kan kelah Hong Kong snap dan ikai manditi wheels snap havan dia amtu. They neki snap pen pai no pulun. They actually their mind works as like a scientist. They explore. Ki ka mind ki ka work differently from other children. So explore ki what long scientists ki what. Sometimes they like to keep in line. They ngi dan ki kena macam dan kena ro bashit snap havan bu. Ki separ Ishim like sepa na ki cuti. Coba kau hian bisa lain nun pangro. Inbo kita inter kata. Te I mean kita along kita sang na itu kan kita behavior connect. Te kita ki satu science kita kita bullshit not happen rock. Man rock. To rock back and forth. Rock back and forth. Some ki rock naman ki they find comfort. It's not maglang pen relax aki. Somebody I remember one case where that the person has grown, an autistic person has grown when he's an adult, he's able to tell his story. But he was not able to speak, but he could type. So when he tells a story, why he does that rocking is because when he heard a radio, when he sees a TV, actually not a radio, a TV, and when he went a little bit, he heard a certain frequency sound. When he goes a little bit, he heard a certain thing. So he liked to go back and forth because of that. So like different why they do that. They done because to the along anxious ki sang le kung ta. They then gijong kay na. So kabrin jong ki children with autism mo. Kapat kamangi menta dai kadan ka then a certain you frequency mo mata. Hindi kata kan no bakrut. Okay, when we hold something, chew bakrut ne. Masan kata yung kata what do we do? Immediately, before your brain can even comprehend masan win. Taka reflex mo kata information. So information naki senses badan naki ni. Naki fingertips. Okay? Kaya straight to the brain. When this is hot, remove your hand. But before you consciously think that to remove your hand, kalau electricity is that fast. Even if the bulb is like so far away and then you on the switch, immediately you'll on. However far the wire is kalong ta. In a child with autism like a brain kamlong ta. Come receive that signal. So what happened is then 2 types mom. Hilong hypersensitive means they receive too much. Magkani kamkrut ni klalong kala. Ngana bat ikani kala krut bat nga. Ne kala la ban betiar. Ne kala ban pang. Okay, to that kalong too much kata. Okay, so what happened if the pedia compati phenomenon? You won't avoid. You'll avoid touching this. You'll avoid doing this. You'll avoid doing so many things. To kata kan kena sensory avoiding. Okay, seeking part kidan balik pemyo snow. Kimyo snow yung kata sensation. Kimyo snow yung kiti yung kimyo snow kiti. They will ban. Sometimes kimyo snow ma. Kimyo snow kiti di kitan pol the head long manta ma fish the free so sometimes you have a ticklish stiff so long that and you're not able to scratch that part which is ticklish. Itu can tu citruat, can try citruat bentuk itu, can watch what. There's certain things is like that. So because can you small, can get come. Some children also can be small bentuk they hug person so much. Not have an hug Macam so throat dia. They find somewhere can tiap dia can you the dia. And they begin to report ki rock high di come shushup you small something like that. Maka dan benta. Dan yang proprioception. Again, they kidan pada ki nak become so throat ka bam it can bam can full bit ki pedak ka question to ki become so hun. Okay. Kat ba kidan pada ki cases pada belong hypersensitive. Kim shal ka person. It's painful. It's sensitive. Long she doesn't have condition but sometimes in the right and yet it got rich it to make that screeching sound. Yeah, they couldn't get talking so sensitive. But imagine if you hear that for the whole day. It is very uncomfortable. And imagine if you cannot even speak it out when bangam sutnat ka sound. Feeling so frustrated. So you might even throw a tantrum, you might even get very agitated. And you cannot even voice it out. No, bakang along bumta. They kum kitapin. They kidan ki kna put kiba kim sharp and kapsno. Even cutting hair is painful for them. Cutting hair is painful. You know, down to kanchi cutting. That's not just a sound, the sensation. Cuma kidan kita dong so sensitive kita sejaki kapang. They cannot bear it. So sometimes when it comes to the mother somehow knows the techniques. They might allow only the mother to touch it. Sometimes so imagine if you have to take the child to a salon or to barber, so they will not cooperate. Cutting hair. Some children like kimla sharp and some clear. More kimla sharp and some clear. They don't put back long. Some children even change clothing kimla sharp. Because kadang ida kejengyak op kimla man sharp neck pang. They won't allow to change clothes frequently. They can kitab that condition. That is sensory, very hypersensitive and hyposensitive. Hypo means kim yosno, ki sick, ki ba yosno chocolate like avoid.
But you say katama tulung kidan kiba le kailang, kidan kiba le chahut, and you know this. There are some people that just generally like being alone, that without office and sort of on the disabilities or anything. How can you differentiate Kim Bat? How can you know that this kid is just an introvert, likes to be up by himself, by herself, versus somebody that is maybe looking for sensory or compacting? How can you differentiate between the two?
Kadang consistent pattern. Kadang make a pattern. Okay, a child who's introvert, but there was a person who's introvert, no? Kindan lagi pray kilong sotna. They will not. Introvert child will not be long. There's certain people that they will always prefer them to be there long. Whoever there's some people that kilong so close, no kilong comfortable. Gitu ke mind. No matter how much introvert or how much yourself, because human beings are social beings. More they always want to involve with someone or the other. They but gitu be kilong comfortable with. They will never be introvert. Any child more, but for a child with autism, they will not. It doesn't matter. But then it doesn't matter. Kilong consistent bit. Take a rukom ka pattern joki kilong consistent bit.
I want to ask about oral motor difficulties. What are some early signs of oral motor difficulties that you can mention, and what are actually oral motor problems?
Okay. Oral motor difficulties. One will be sucking, the other will be blowing, and the other will be feeding. Okay, there's another children with CP, cerebral palsy. They have a lot of drooling because they cannot close their mouth. Okay, so anything to do with the mouth, opening, closing, all that, kadeka oral motor. Okay, oral sensory, but kadai with the senses senses ki balalong sensory seeking or sensory avoiding. Sensory avoiding will be picky eaters. Okay, sensory avoiding will be picky eaters or certain texture. When they eat, it'll taste differently. So they will never avoid eating the certain types of food or certain types of Some children will hate it when it's sticky. They don't like to touch it or they don't like to eat it. They like something which is dry and cool. Okay, even hot, even the temperature also they will not like. So that's a sensory avoiding. Long hypersensitive. Okay, so even that also kena oro sensory. Okay, and then they cannot feel it, so can bump, hambon, can either the stuff or sometimes they even hit the mouth. They can sensory. Oro motor they all about opening, they motor control. Okay, but can't, but play. They sometimes children with cerebral palsy will keep on having drooling. Sometimes it's a speech problem also can come to. Even the tongue also the motor. It cannot go up, cannot go down. So if you cannot go up, you can say ta, ra, la. Cannot go up to udan kidan you kena bosu tutang Shillong may hapwa. Because ka muscles yung kam especially with cerebral palsy. We see this a lot. Ulong may hapwa. The tongue is always down, so they cannot say certain words. When they grow up also ka speech ka affected. But blowing also is very important. Okay, now if you brush your teeth, you have to spit it out. Something is there, you have to blow it out. No, but that also is important. Then you have problem with blowing. The second is even more important because you have to suck. No, you have to eat and all. They're like that. They cannot chew. So all that you have to address.
So in the very broadest sense of the word, exercise is important, so to speak, to exercise because the tongue is the muscle, so you have to exercise that, and well, your whole face is made of muscles. When it comes to exercising, children don't really do much, but they like to play around, as we mentioned. Why is playing so important in children and adults?
We don't call the word exercise in our context. Number ba? Exercise kalau may take tang ba strengthen that part of the body, no? So for us, we therapy because we don't just strengthen that part because we focus on the function also and care to how it functions. So the occupation of a child is play. That's why, like I said, we use the occupation as a treatment. For adults, we use the occupation as treatment. For children, also we use the child's occupation as treatment. So what is a child occupation? To play, to grow, to learn, to make friends. Areas that's why play is very, very important. Okay? The play doesn't mean and all like that. It doesn't mean just like that. Play can be, like I told you, different stages of play. Play very kalong important hanamarba. Brain development also happens through play. Stimulate your brain, stimulate your sense of sight, stimulate your sense of hearing, stimulate your sense of taste, your sense of smell, of touch, everything is stimulated. So play is very, very important. A child who doesn't play, brain development will not develop as much as a child who plays.
What about when a child cannot move around, cannot run, cannot walk? What if it's a child that's bedridden, so to speak? How do they play and how do you?
Children with disability, kimla banjing, kimla banjai, kimla bakadan ka jing duna ka dokotmet. Kumi ke children but kidang don maybe deban la ban lekai. Ni hikai ki make paro ba kuno ban lekai ki ter ban hieng di balloon nek nang belong colorful. Mata shi tia bet. Ti kuno pen ki ikini ti changki. Tingin da ki balloon nek nuki tiar ki balong thaba. Somehow ki la ban reach. And you should ki make pao ju kamne balong hatak rukom makan te ikalong ben dalalong too much challenging. Kim sunat chuban le kin no. Dida ka suklat ru kinam enjoy shudak. Dibin done a little bit of challenge kin dia tang ba. Kidi ben don hatak rukom makilaban ki hatak distance makilaban le akay. Kidi ben tiar ben hayin kilaban le akay. Ki jan, ki dupata, ki shawl, ki kinu tiar ben hayin kilaban le akay bet. Tekta di ben stimulation long mi asking ong ki stimulation long i kaban involved ite ka jukom keren, jukom pet, ki jukom yaran ki make pa. Nadong sidong tabro khoi ka penirap. Even though di bi klung shu tiaru involved. Tingin alap ba kidan hi kena kunir mo kiba bentak cerebral palsy mo kipa lakren. Dama kimi kipa yang so involved ki tipet. Tak expression yung klung la tip be di ba ipang ne yung hoot ne yung em. Di manum laban tip makikila laban no tas di class kita ba dan bagi klung ba pluk kapor bagi klung kilaban no tas kita.
So in this day and age of the iPad kids and Coco Melon, everything, you talk about eye contact. Most parents, not through any fault of their own, but through society as a whole, like to stick their kid in front of a TV or an iPad and let them play and watch very overstimulating shows like Coco Melon. That's the only one I know. How can they then realize that their kid is not actually making eye contact, is not showing any signs of play or anything that this? How can they differentiate because they're just obsessed with the show, or do the parents simply overload it because of the bright colors?
Encourage ka screen time. Ka screen time it's not good here, especially at an early stage. It's not good. Encourage siya katan man ba? Like you said, kadante ka detrimental effect. Tabapet ito naka-light ne. Kumunsiyak, finapet kita give all films. Slim haven't changed. Film can change. Ki flip ki change ki scenes. Bagi different scenes no bagi show. Slim. It takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds. But focus mantab di half a second la change. Half seconds la change. Half a second la change. Walang ki reels ro mantama katukin ka katap affect okay. Then ki kana that are children with autism who have high function, very high function, but they're not verbal. But they communicate through text, typing through text. Okay, augmentative communication. They see the use of those kind of instruments is not so detrimental. Like the affect because they use that as a mode. So kato kam affect handle. Okay. The screen is not the problem. The problem is the videos. The content is a problem, which the attention span is taken out. They, as much as possible, could be done with timing when you give, and then it should be introduced at a very, very young age. Then you can teach all that can give.
Because that is also a problem even with adults, that they just enjoy scrolling and everything.
Now, if you see everyone, even adults also have very less attention span. They're very forgetful because of those. Actually, the reels are the culprit.
So let's say, what is a common symptom actually?
No, it's not just jumping around. It's just that the brain is overstimulated. So the brain is overstimulated. So they cannot hold the attention for a long time. And some of them are very highly intelligent. So it's very different from autism.
The hyperactivity part. Kids are hyperactive regardless, right?
Yeah, boys and girls are different. In the typical growing children, yes, boys are more hyper than girls.
So that's what I want to ask. When it comes to hyperactivity, what is just a kid being kid versus a kid with ADHD? What is the main difference or a very subtle difference between it?
Yeah. So yes, ADHD, if you observe children with ADHD, they cannot, even if it's something which is interesting, they will not be able to do more than 5 seconds, 10 seconds. They just keep changing. They cannot sit for a long period of time. Whereas a child who's hyper, if they like something, they will do that. But then we notice also children with ADHD, there are certain activities that they really like. They will actually get sit also for an hour. That's also there. Even though if they're having ADHD, but it's something that they really enjoy, they will sit. But other things, they keep moving. So it's a very thin line between a child with ADHD and a child who's just hyper. Very thin line. It's just that only after a long period of time when you see a pattern, then that's only way you can identify that a child is ADHD.
Okay. That's interesting. So, kanjo fang kaple and ki habits di long na ki e. The week pa, they have noticed one or two of these signs. What is that ideal window of time to come and see you and to seek early intervention?
Actually, early intervention, any kind which is not with the normal development. Compare. I mean, at any time, okay, if it, like I told you, if it's a 1 day old or 2 day old child or 1 month old or 2 months old child or any child at any stage, when they show a different kind of pattern from the typically developmental children, that itself will indicate, suppose now they taught handwriting, what they write, they start going to school, they start writing, but the way they write is very hard, or they use too much force, or they cannot finish on time. They could talk like compare. So from that itself, we can give early intervention. That itself is early intervention. So when we adjust anything at an early stage, it's very easy for us to manage. Oh.
And why is that? Why is acting so early critical for a child's development?
Because the kat benang kam kloy, kata kadang kloy ke jin ben improve ka kam kloy. Tika treatment ru ke duna bah. Okay, na hajika then ke any condition la ben jam hapo shimnai, it'll take 1 year. Just because ki one slim. It might take 2 years or 3 years just because ki one slim. Kala ho. So that's why that during the developmental period they kalong very crucial, because 1 month itself is very crucial for development. For any condition in that way, any condition ada fracture case, ada any kind of condition also, kadang one kloy, kadang kloy benjam, kadang shorten, kadang duna ke period of treatment. Ya kadang one slam ke period of treatment kalau kan slam benjam ru ke simpor.
Okay. So kiklong not all kids can actually follow verbal instructions, but also put packaging correctly. So what does an initial occupational therapy assessment look like for a young child from personal to verbal communication and verbal instructions here?
It depends on the age. Okay. Cuma at a certain age, when the pot she's nampak kita nampak lah ban follow what kita ki instruction bagi ai kimi pa ban pak lek kini Ibla ham he lah so tu. It depends kan ki ni happen observe kulang ba whether kini dan problem with the intellectual disability. Ne de bakim so tu ya ka question ne kadai bak dan some other kind of condition. Kita different assessment, neuro assessment lang kajong, intellectual disability lang kajong, like that. So katakin. And then kita kena mantawad, even if you go back to children with autism, they cannot follow verbal instructions. Kung kita dapat ni kita show the action. We use the concept of monkey see, monkey do, like that. So we should only give pa bandan lang hang tu. Just and hindi ben only keep it yan hang liat na. They should liat to action every day. Suppose if they want the child to learn how to brush their teeth, kap should brush paramaki, kapan kimi kilong brush their teeth, pa brush their teeth. Then they start noticing. Then they want to do something like that. They even children with intellectual disability children with intellectual disability you have ikai ka George till they learn. George close. Then finally ka hata ka road memory because they see that way of working and they will learn it like that.
We're actually coming close towards the end of this interview, but before we completely cut it, can you talk to me about some of the things that, like any stories that you have about in your line of works, your success stories, some rocky roads, everything.
Okay. Whatever we find so far with the therapy and whatever the treatment that we have given, the best is when they come early, 1. 2 is consistency. If they're able to come on a consistent basis, then improvement ka one bit. Judan bang ang sumar baka nam improve. There's never been a case like that. But ang sumar kam improve. The kilong ki parents kitam kidan ki cases mo mangilong bagi ki paru ki let to staban one. Okay. Even though ki sa siya jangay, tabangi ay porte ki in one sin chimna, nya arsin chimna tamahayin ki lebet. Sometimes ki connect with ni through WhatsApp do ki connect with ni. Ki pa ki dur ki ang long man lek ni long man lek tangi ni suggest ni ay ki benda long man lek ni long ho ka long man lek to tingi sha then that we teng kla lap ba ka give and take te to kalong one of the best pangilap haka man ok bendio ka good results in the treatment kan kalong kata ka way na kita ha ka failure mostly greba ka inconsistency la one shipor la sang jam Kija no. Sometimes you want din arsnem na kem kasi ada like ayur bedik stu kita like keleng dan sawan biang. that whole 5 years or 3 years kalau isnam kita wantang bat niru la kham jam no la jam or la sa la ban yat menye la obvious ko timing tu ko bendo so now kila happen spend more time pada and effort when one pada la tat kan ketu ka inconsistency ka de ka way ba ilap ka de ka failure of the treatment kan bakam kam dan give you benefit ya ka what the service bani ani kan what
I want Mana personally, I want you to share a personal story about you and some patients that you've actually treated. I really want to hear about how they improved and from where they were and where they are now.
Yes, I'll just show you a video mah. When we kena bidang rusnem. Di hapo bidang le kai nya ni kali ke rung ke hata ke juk ke por ke mesin jeng ke pa bat lihat ki pelang. Kadang yad ini kena dang lek kai hapo bila kai ke rung ke dang lek kai halo jong tak mesin hajan ke mesin ke bam ya ke keti ke jong i tu ila lut ke keti jong i bro khoi ke sa sang ka shebre keti kemi te nang tapat te ki doktor jong i kila put kila sumar kila su ik tu keti ka baka keti ban ne tu keti kemi Ketu berkhid ada boleh lot first aid, medical aid, everything ada boleh lot more surgery, everything ada boleh. Hadin ketapat kita wancani. Wancani ini kena idang berkat idang terus nam. Berjat berkhid South League. Even for the berkat mentak beri belarang bak nak adult su kena mela ada bentik that psychologically, mentally, emotionally kalak tak lot. Mo bentik je look su kalak hair. Di kalak tak paham ki tang ba kataru ngi kerpat kimi bikin wan sumar di ini kena isa bat ki bahyang chene kimi ka alek no na magidan kunrit di ngi jing sumar hapo up to yo fenda pe ek to video fini iba empat la re kasing meningkong empat la ban le emo dang shula tang man chu bat mulumala di hadin up to yo pat fansi bai la la ban play la ban pinan kam jukti along ko madan klik South League siyempre aktig bela aja ilalaban de idan ibe ini kenapan kalong ba po bidang ide akawit para ikumdung dunar para na kani khosil tikta khosil ko asang ban sip asang ban up tikta le sumar mo kla le haki doctors la yo ek treatment ta yo dawai kla yo jing sumar takba kani ka khosil pada kamla shaban khliap de defim la ban khliap ka janjar ha ba fin Shong hapo bathroom, shong toilet, ban yard, few steps kala janjar. Merkap kliap ya kezat hapo beli am tu. Haru ba fin pai, haba tia aru ba fin pai na gawe ka liang shwe ka liang ru haban kliap ya khosiu. De ketu kala affect. Di ha juk por ti mantan la sang le treatment ti fin di la sang improve de. Ski la sang improve. Di ka concern jeng ikpa kalong ba I haban di school hi. I haban di school hi ti haban deka school bus. Teknik school bus ne hu kilong ki steps kam drong long ti bus mit kam drong so I kam janjar ben kiyo kam janjar ben yer so fin I ni video pat ngsi ikum no bangi padan kan da kata konsep pat ba in proof ke ting hikai ting pen ai ka wait through po ka plakot ka jing khia jong plakot kam ai extra be jing drong lung ai extra khandiat khna be dala ek to jing drong jong ai mengi moi la ban ki ka bus dah bakut hi ka occupational therapy long ke iki bingilek kare ban long meaningful kare ban long purposeful kata kare ka main thing about occupational therapy